I had a full realization of self at the beginning of this year. After many years of being on a spiritual consciousness, non-dual, whatever you want to call it kind of path, I had a full realization of self. At long last, after about 7 years. All things considered, that ain't bad. Could have gone my entire life without ever reaching that. Could have gone my entire life without ever even taking the first step on that path, without ever hearing anything about consciousness or awakening or enlightenment. So that's pretty cool, and I'm pretty grateful for that experience that I was given. That being said, there are challenges that have come in this year following crossing that finish line. One of them being realizing that the idea of a finish line is kind of arbitrary and illusory. And that there was still a Joe's human life to live after crossing it. A part of me always knew that that would be the case. But then you wake up the day after an accomplishment. I'm sure everybody can relate to this with whatever they've pursued and succeeded at. And you realize, oh dang, what do I do now? I live just like I was doing before. What happens now? The year leading up to my full realization, I was working with a spiritual teacher who really accelerated the whole process for me. And I had multiple small awakenings within that year. The details of which I've gone into in some previous videos of what those small individual awakenings looked like. And I just had this sense while it was going on that like, oh, well, once I cross that, past the final point, then all problems just cease to be. Even though that's not what my teacher said, that's not what any spiritual teacher I've ever come across has said. I thought that all these issues were just going to autocorrect right overnight. And so there was an inherent sense of unpleasant feelings coming in of like, well, if this is what full realization looks like, then what was even the point of doing it and all this stuff, The truth is, Joe, this entity that we know of, what I've functionally labeled Joe, he has this whole history of habitual patterns of emotions and thoughts and actions, and that stuff doesn't change overnight, regardless of what kind of awakening you just had. And so when I hear my spiritual teacher say that in the first year past his full realization of self, he said, yeah, it was kind of unpleasant for me. There were some issues that arose. I was like, what? He told me that pretty close to the end. And I was like, darn it! Darn it! I wanted an overnight correction. And I like what Gangaji said. Wonderful teacher. I hope to take one of her courses or retreats someday. But Gangaji said, the body is a denser entity, so it takes a while for it to catch up with whatever realization you've made, whatever awakening you've had. And both of those things are very helpful to hear. It can be disappointing to hear that stuff doesn't get solved overnight, but it also is reassurance that it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, and it doesn't mean that your experiences weren't legitimate. it's okay to still have issues before you. And maybe you always will have some level of human issue to deal with. All that being said, this has still been an incredible year. Even with all the human issues that I'm watching, partly because of just being aware of all those things. All those issues or shortcomings that I see in Joe, and recognizing if there was any legitimacy to them, and to whatever extent I'm seeing some legitimacy in that issue being a thing. A lot of them have just been running their course. They've been flaming up really big, becoming maybe a bigger issue than they ever have before. And then they've just been kind of blowing out like a candle. And there's been this sense with a lot of different habits of thought, emotion, action, etc., that I've just had this reassurance of, like, I think that has just run its course. And Joe will be able to keep moving on now. So that's already great, but another great aspect of it is that I'm not resisting those things either. My true self, my big capital I, is not resisting those things. Again, I can feel maybe resistance arise, but it's no more personalized and no more a part of me than anything in my external right now. Like it's a windy day outside right now. Feeling that resistance or any other unpleasant things arise is just like the heavy wind outside. I'm just aware of it. And I very, very much, as we're closing out this almost full year, post full awakening, I'm very much just resting in the knowledge that everything is okay. And Joe will just find his way. Without any sense of him doing anything. He will find exactly the way that he's supposed to go. As he always has, but in a way that he couldn't appreciate before. I am just putting down the struggle. The truth is, I, in my purest form, have never even participated in the struggle. It was just a matter of how I connected to and related to whatever struggle was perceived. And I'm really excited because I'm getting to a point where I feel like I'm getting good at talking about this stuff. It's not everybody's interest, it's not everybody's experience, not everybody can relate to what I'm talking about, and that's okay. And even people who can kind of relate are going to draw whatever conclusion they do from anything that I say, and that's also okay. Again, all of this stuff has always been the case. But there's an allowance of it now that gives me a lot of great ease. I've been afraid to make any sudden moves, metaphorically, when talking about this stuff. Because I don't want to say something that some respected spiritual teacher would disagree with, or I don't want to say anything that sounds too woo-woo to the layman that's not done any of this stuff before. But Joe's way is Joe's way. And he's always only followed Joe's way, and he will only continue to follow Joe's way. And other people will cross over onto that path, either from his personal interactions or from watching him here on the internet. And they may partake of some benefit from Joe's way, but that's not going to change Joe's course. I really, really am blessed to have had the experience of Joe, and also to have had the experience of realizing that I'm not limited to Joe. I'm not limited in the slightest. And I won't be in the coming year. And I'll talk about plans for 2026 in the next video.